When you get that gut feeling that you need to do something, act on it. Don't try to understand it, act on it.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Lara, host of Radical Acts Uncut. I'm a creative, an entrepreneur, and CEO of Impact PR. Today I'm speaking with Markette Sheppard. She's an Emmy Award-winning journalist, author, and founder of Glowstream TV. And she's host of podcast More to the Story with Markette Sheppard. I'm also proud to call her a dear friend. Over the years, we've worked together in various capacities, and she's also executive producer of Radical Acts Uncut, so I'm thrilled to have her in the guest seat today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Jacqueline. I'm also proud to call you a dear friend and a colleague over so many years in the storytelling and content creation industry.
Amazing. Well, can you please begin by telling me your origin story and what drew you to storytelling across various platforms, from TV and books to digitally and on your podcast? You're clearly very gifted.
Well, thank you. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. And I just want to acknowledge that now is a really tough time for everyone living in LA. And my heart goes out to not just friends and family, but all of the residents of LA County who are dealing with the fires and the sudden grief and loss that comes along with unexpected tragedy. So I just want everyone listening who is from LA or has friends and family there just to know that I'm thinking of you and my heart goes out, because that's not only my hometown, it's a creative town. And it's also just a city with a bunch of wonderful people. I grew up in a part of LA where the people who lived and worked in the city where I was living, we were the backbone of Los Angeles. So lots of teachers, healthcare professionals. Carson, California is the name of the city within LA County. My father is in construction sales. My mother was a teacher. And so we weren't a part of the Hollywood community, but we're very much a part of the community that keeps the city of Los Angeles running. And my origins in storytelling, as far back as I can remember, is it's always been something within me. I remember being maybe around 10 years old and convincing my father to take our home video camera and come out on the front lawn with me while I grabbed a microphone and I did little mock news reports. So it was just something that was a calling. And whenever I've had the opportunity, I've answered that call and always looked for opportunities that spoke to my passion and what I believe is my purpose, which is to shine a light on the stories and people that can just inform and inspire humanity. So my first full-time job was at Black Entertainment Television. And it was great because I was like 22 or 23 at the time. And the average age of an employee there was 25 years old. So I was surrounded by a bunch of young, ambitious, talented Black creatives. I made some lifelong friends. And I just got the bug for storytelling on all kinds of platforms. And just it took off from there.
As a reporter, too, you have an interesting lens of spotting a story because, again, I think not everybody can recognize stories readily. So is there anything that you'd say about storytelling and what makes great stories?
What makes a great story? Ooh, I guess it depends on the medium. When I started out, I was a digital content creator for BET and other cable networks at the time. I also freelance wrote for Essence Magazine and Essence.com. So when you're writing, there is a certain type of story that works where you really have to craft your words in an artful and informative way. Whereas with television, you have to be able to show and tell. So it's not just enough to have the words. And of course, like having a strong script is so important to visual storytelling, television, film, documentary, but you also need very strong visuals. So it's a language, I think. It's a code to visual storytelling that is unique And I love decoding complex information and making it understandable for the masses. When I was in radio, I even worked in radio. That's a whole different form of storytelling because you need to write for the ear. Like sound becomes so important when you're in radio. What can I record that the end listener or the end user can hear that will pique their interest, that can better inform them more than I can even tell them? Whereas TV, what can I show the viewer that can better inform them more than I can possibly tell them? And thinking just about the LA fires right now, you can have an anchor in a studio talking about the fires, or you can have a reporter on the scene showing you the fire. And that's why so many of the Los Angeles based newscasts, which I've been watching on my streaming TV, all of their news anchors are out in the field showing people this is the devastation because it's such a strong visual.
And I always think about too, like facts can bore people, but when you tell stories, that can really resonate and help people understand the information. And can you now tell me, what is the mission of Glowstream TV?
Well, when I started Glowstream TV, I was coming off of 4 years of hosting a morning show in Washington, D.C. on the CBS affiliate. And it was an integrated marketing show, which means we had celebrities and entertainment clips and movies and film reviews, but we also had local business leaders on there to promote their products and services. And I noticed that more often than not, the local business leaders who looked like me, who were women of color or people of color, they were priced out of the opportunity. When we launched, segments were costing about $1,000 a minute. And for local business owners, solopreneurs, kitchen table entrepreneurs, they can't afford that type of marketing spend to promote their business. And they have great products and services. So I thought, why don't I create a digital platform where I use all of my knowledge working in television and sales-driven integrated marketing TV and offer it at a price that I know could be affordable to small business owners. And then they can come and talk about their services and products in an affordable way to a community of like-minded people. And I used my following, usually women and mothers and people interested in lifestyle, health, wellness, and that sort of thing, entertainment and movies. What should I watch? What movie should I spend my hard-earned money on this weekend or take my children to? So I use my social media following to grow that audience and then offer a service to business owners like yourself who could never afford to pay $4,000 for a 4-minute segment.
And the name Glowstream, can you tell me about the name Glowstream?
Everything that I try to do as far as my storytelling, I have an intent to shed light on a certain subject and also to put goodness out in the world. I would hope that everything that you see and read on Glowstream TV is something that is positive or is something that is just goodness that's being put out into the world. And so I have a team of writers. I don't write everything, but the goal is to not add to any negativity, which I know can be clickbait in the media, but to help elevate, inspire, promote health, wellness, understanding, and appreciation. So like my first children's book I wrote, it's called What is Light? And so just keeping with that light theme, I thought Glow would be a great transition into the digital content creation space for women-oriented brands and consumers.
Yeah, I love that. And we definitely need more positive content and light in the world. So that is an amazing mission. And when you think back to your childhood or earlier times, is there an event, experience, or challenge that you believe contributed to your creativity and boldness?
I feel like I've always been creative and I've always been bold. If anything, it's always been in me.
On this show, we unpack tests. Sometimes your test comes via a phone call that you weren't expecting. But when you look back, you're glad that you picked up. Can you tell me and tell listeners a little bit about your test?
In December of 2023, I received a call from one of my cousins who I hadn't heard from in years. And he was calling from my favorite cousin's cell phone. So I actually thought it was her calling me. And I always pick up the phone for her. But it wasn't her on the other end. It was one of my male cousins, and he was distraught. And he was saying, Cousin Eunice, that was my cousin's name. Cousin Eunice is not doing well. She's sick. She's in the hospital, and you need to come right away. And she lives about 4.5 hours away from me in Ohio. And so it's not even 7 days before Christmas. And I just remember dropping everything and getting in my car and driving straight to Ohio, just stopping to fill up my gas tank and going straight to the hospital and seeing my cousin, who she had suffered a stroke by the time I got to her. She couldn't speak. She had a feeding tube and oxygen. And it was just like a way I had never seen her. Now, my cousin was really like a second mother to me, even though we are biologically cousins. She's old enough to be my mother, if not my grandmother. And I've always grown up with visiting her in the summers, her coming to my family home and visiting us. She always got me birthday presents. She showed up at graduations. And in between moving from LA to the DC area, I had like a 2-week gap in between my housing being available. And I moved in with her for 2 weeks. And then she drove me down to DC, filled my refrigerator up with food, drove me around the area as a mother would do. So this is just the type of person she is. When I graduated from college, even before the 2 weeks of me living with her, we met in Las Vegas, her and her friends and my parents, and we started gambling right away. And I remember she came up to me and she's like, Markette, I put 75 cents in a slot machine. I just won $3,000. And I was just like, I just put a quarter in a slot machine. I just won $300. It was like a magical thing. We went shopping. I bought a leather jacket, which I still have today. But that was just kind of the energy of when we were together. We were having fun. Good things were happening. People wanted to be around us. She was very well dressed all the time, impeccable style, hair, makeup, always done. Never saw a gray hair. And when you spent the night at her house, by the time I woke up in the morning, and I'm an early riser, she would be up in full makeup, like with her pajamas on, but her hair would be done in full makeup. So I never really saw her not put together until I get to the hospital that December evening, 2023, and no makeup, no hair done, in a hospital robe. Her mouth is open. She can't even close her mouth. And she's just there, like in a shell, which was her body. But I was looking at her eyes and I knew that she was still there. So I'm glad that without thought, I had it in me to just drop everything and make sure that my husband could take my son to school and pick him up and just go check on my cousin. Before that, I was so grateful that earlier that summer, I just, on a hunch, I said, I need to go visit Cousin Eunice. And I talked to my husband and I said, we need to go to Youngstown, Ohio this weekend. And he was like, this weekend? And I'm like, yeah, I need to visit my cousin and just see her. We had grown apart over the years, even though we were always close and she was always kind to me. Family is big and there's a lot of people. She was kind to everybody. She was everyone's favorite cousin. And she always told me, oh, Markette, you're going to be fine on your own. You're going to be the one who makes it. And so she started focusing on a lot of my cousins who aren't doing well in life, like so many African-American families. It seems like the cousins who are ne'er too well or can't seem to quite get it together, they get the most attention. And then the cousins who are breaking those generational cycles are the ones who are kind of out in the world doing their own thing. And the family's like, you're going to be okay. So we had some back and forth about that. And I was like, why are you investing all of your time into, people who keep draining your resources? But I just got this sudden feeling that I needed to go visit, and my husband and son were coming with me. So we drove to Ohio to visit her. We had an amazing weekend, just like I told you about that great energy whenever we're together. We went to a ballet performance, and one of my little cousins was performing in the ballet. We went out to eat, and we sat for hours. We joked, we laughed, we talked, we stayed up all night talking. We talked about our cousin issue that Saturday night, and the whole family was around. It was like a group session where it was like, okay, what was the issue? And I said, okay, well, this is what I think. And she was like, oh, I finally get it. And I'm like, okay. And I finally get where you're coming from too. And it was just like a coming together, a shedding of any type of hurt feelings. And it was just kind of like a reset button. And I'm so glad we had that weekend together. And my husband, my son was there, my other cousins, his wife, his children, we just all out in the open. We hugged each other, we ate, we had a good old merry time. So fast forward to the very next time that I speak to my cousin and everyone who was in that room, she's basically on her deathbed. And I thought, wow, that intuitive feeling like I need to see my cousin, that was the last time I saw her looking healthy, completely alert. She didn't have any diseases. She wasn't on any medication. It was just freak accident that had her leave, I think, way, way too soon. But the lesson I learned from that was when you get that gut feeling that you need to do something, act on it. Don't try to understand it, act on it. Especially if it's something like reaching out to family or putting out goodness into the world or resolving some type of misunderstanding. That weekend was all of that. And I didn't even know what the weekend was going to mean. Like, this was our last weekend together. But the gut feeling was just go to Ohio. I always knew I could stay overnight. I always knew once I'm there, I'm going to eat well. So it wasn't even like calling, asking her, can I come? It was just calling, telling her, I am coming, fix up the guest bedroom.
You hit on a lot of beautiful things. And it's fitting that we're having this conversation at the start of the new year, when a lot of people are resetting. They've just been with family and have had some tough conversations. And also with listening to your gut, I want you to kind of speak a little bit further on that, and maybe even share what it feels like to you, because you so readily listen to your gut. But I think sometimes listeners might not know what that feels like. And so maybe through you sharing.
Well, sure. I think, one, I'm a believer in a higher power. And for people of a different faith or religion than mine, I'm not going to name that power, but I'm just going to say there's something bigger than the human experience at work, I believe. So I just kind of get a feeling. It's not even a feeling like hot or cold. It's more like a knowing. And whenever I've listened to that knowing, I've really been on the right track. I really feel like that. And I tell this story, at social circles sometimes. But when I went on the first date with my husband, I went on one date with him. And a couple days later, I remember being on the bus in Washington, D.C. And I looked out the window and I was like, I'm going to marry that guy. It was just like a thought, but it was like a very clear thought with no confusion, no question mark at the end of it. And sure enough, I've been knowing my husband for 20 years and been married to him for a little less than that. And it's one of the great relationships of my life. I put him up there with the relationship I have with my cousin, just like a very good, healthy, fun, give relationship. But after I first met him, I just had a knowing that we were going to get married or he was going to be in my life. And going back to me feeling like I had to just go see my cousin, it was a statement type sentence in my head, not a question mark, not anything where I needed to go ask 3 people their opinion. No, it was like, no, no, no. This is clearly what I need to do. And so let me go ahead and do this.
Yeah, and a clear knowing. I love the way
Clarity, yes.
not a question, a clear statement.
I think clarity is divine. Clarity is kind and benevolent and comforting.
Yeah, and then you spoke about, growing apart in relationships. Sometimes people are living geographically in different places and life can be busy, and for different reasons, sometimes we drift apart from people, but it's really important to keep special people in your life close to you. Is there something that you would say just kind of about nurturing relationships?
Yeah, well, I think it takes 2 people to nurture relationships. And my cousin's big thing was after I got married, she was like, "Oh, you're married now. You probably want to spend all of your time with your husband. And I'm a single old lady living in the country. Why would you want to spend time with me?" And I had to constantly reassure her, "I want to spend time with you because I love you. You're kind to me. We have a good time together. We're family." So she would always kind of push me away. She really wanted to work with my cousins who were having trouble stabilizing their lives in their 20s and 30s because she was needed with them more than she was needed with me. And so, if anyone listening to this can relate to that, I would say on the other end of that is everyone needs support. Your strong friends and family need support too. The most successful people that I've seen when I go into boardrooms and business meetings, they have their mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and the people who know them from day one surrounding them and protecting them. When I bought my first home, I was in the closing office by myself. Most people will have their parents or family around them. But my family always thought, "Oh, she doesn't need us." And it's like, if anything, I need you even more when I'm making these big moves because I need people around me who want the best for me and can look out for me and protect me when I have blind spots. So that was the back and forth of our conversations that kind of led to us drifting apart.
Yeah. And at the core, like, we're all human. Like, I like the point that you said about everybody needs support, and we're all human. So regardless of external markers, everybody needs support.
Yes. Yeah. And everyone needs support. And then, too, on my end, I can look within and reflect and say, well, you know what? Some of my cousins, they really did need a lot of help. And so, God bless her for using her life to pour into friends and family who really, really, truly were helpless and still are, and they are helpless without her. And for what it's worth, I will be okay.
Yeah. And I believe I've seen, you talked about her fashion, and I believe I've seen you wearing one of her very fashionable dresses.
Yes. So she never had any children of her own. Parents spend on daycare and education and, kids things. She would buy amazing clothes and she would travel the world and get things custom made. And as she got older and I would go visit her, we would look at clothes in her closet. She had about, I don't know, a dozen fur coats. And sometimes we would just go in her basement and put on her fur coats. We would sit and have a drink at the bar and just have fun. And one of these outfits she gave me was like $1,000 custom made caftan. And, she's like, "Do you want it? You can have it." And I'm like, "Yes." And every time there's a special occasion, I'll pull it out of my closet every couple of years. But she did that on several occasions. I have about 4 of her dresses from over the years. I have 2 dresses I believe she got on a vacation in Hawaii. They're one of a kind pieces. I don't think you can find them anywhere in the world. But she was really someone who talked to me about loving yourself and showing the world that you love yourself by taking care of yourself, by grooming yourself, presenting yourself in the best possible way. And that was through clothing. She always told me to wear glossy lipstick because it was sexy. I mean, like, what older woman in your family gives you that advice? I got a lot of advice on how to be beautiful and how to love yourself and also love other people. She talked to me a lot about giving, and she told me that's how you get your blessings. So when I was 20 something years old, I had a car. I didn't want it anymore. I decided I was just going to catch public transportation so I didn't have to pay parking fees and maintenance. She said, why don't you give your car to one of your cousins who needs it? And I was like, oh, I can sell it and make money. And she's like, no, no, no. This is how you get your blessings. You have to give, when you're in a position to. And so I gave my car to one of my cousins, who needed it. And so, she's just had a really fun, benevolent spirit that was never, ever preachy, but just in a way that got through to you, in an acceptable, way. So
Yeah, I love like this story, like legacy, hearing about her and the lessons that she's taught, because again, you mentioned she's one of the first people who passed, and grief can be hard and everybody grieves in their own way. Can you share how you started a memorial scholarship in her name? And
well, my cousin Eunice was the first person like in my life who I knew personally and I was close to who passed away. At first I cried, and then you walk around the house or you see a picture or a song plays on the radio and it reminds you of that person. For me, it's like a Frankie Beverly and Mays song, Before I Let Go. I think of her. And so many months after her passing, I was sitting on the couch in my living room thinking, what do I do with this grief? Like, grief is uncomfortable. You want it to pass, but it's like you don't have any control over it. And I thought I would start a memorial scholarship fund in her name and in my grandmother's name, who passed away a few years before her, but I just wasn't as close to my grandmother. And I thought one of the stories that my cousin always told me is that she did 1 year of college and then left college to go marry her husband. And she had always regretted it. So I started the scholarship fund to help other young women of color who are in college to help fund their educations. Because while I can't go back and make her dream come true, I can honor her legacy by helping someone in need fulfill their dream of an education. And college is expensive. And for me, like, I had to work and pay for college. Like, every single dollar that my higher education cost, like, I paid for it. There was no trust fund or anything. And there are many times where you don't know if you're going to finish your degree, and it's strictly because of finances. So I wanted to do something for other young Black women who may be feeling that pressure of tuition and student loans, and then also just keep the memory of my cousin Eunice alive in a positive way. I partnered with an organization called bold.org, who helps individuals launch memorial scholarship funds, or really just any scholarship fund you want, without having to stand up an independent nonprofit. So I had some meetings with them. I had to share pictures with the group. And all of that really helped me to channel my grief into positive energy that's going to move me forward, move, hopefully, the young women who will benefit from the scholarship money forward. And then just going back to my theme of putting out goodness in the world, it'll move my purpose in life forward, which is I'm telling a story about my beloved cousin and grandmother through this scholarship fund that is putting out goodness in the world.
yeah, could you state the full name official name of the scholarship fund?
Yeah, so it's the Eunice L. Mason and Cora D. Jones Memorial Scholarship Fund. And I thought about the name of it for a long time. And I said, I'm just going to call it the Mason Jones Memorial Fund, which rolls off your tongue, so much smoother and quicker. But I do believe that there is power in saying one's name. And I want everyone who comes across this scholarship to know who these women were. It was Eunice L. Mason and Cora D. Jones, and they were born at a time when the idea of college was like an insurmountable triumph just to get to day one of college with so many barriers in their way. And as we make progress as a people, the barriers are broken down. You can go to college, but can you pay for it? And so I want everybody, when they're applying for this scholarship, or they may see it when it launches in 2025, I want them to know their names, and they're going to see their faces and know that these are the women who the baton is being passed from. The baton was passed to me from them, and now I'm passing it on to someone who's trying and ultimately will be deserving to help advance everyone's dreams forward, who I can possibly touch through this small thing that I'm starting that will hopefully grow.
Yeah, that's beautiful in terms of even just taking pain, but turning it into actually real purpose and action. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I saw that it's going to be for women pursuing degrees in communications and nursing. What's the connection for those two subjects?
Yeah, so my grandmother had always wanted to be a nurse, Cora D. Jones. And she told me that growing up in rural Alabama, the Black school ended at the 9th grade because of Jim Crow era discrimination. It was just arbitrarily, it ended at the 9th grade. So you really couldn't be a high school graduate and then qualify to go on to college unless you left the farm, left the city, and went on this crazy journey away from your family to go pursue a high school diploma where a Black student, a Black female student, would be accepted. But she always wanted to be a nurse. And the times that she mentioned it to me, she was well into her 70s and 80s, late in life, still talking about this dream she had in her heart from childhood. And I just thought, wow, I need to help a nursing student. And the same with my cousin Eunice. She loved Oprah Winfrey. She loved the Oprah Winfrey show. She was like a diehard fan. And she would always tell me throughout the course of our relationship, well into her life, if I had seen a Black woman on TV like Oprah, maybe I would have finished college and maybe I would have gotten, my degree and done more with my life. And she would always say that. And so I thought, okay, maybe she would have been in communications or storytelling like me because she was a talker. And so I said, okay, well, these are the two concentrations I'm going to focus this scholarship fund on.
I love that. Beautiful. And if you were given a do-over, would you make your test disappear?
Oh, absolutely not. I think the first test was listening to my gut. And I'm so glad I listened to my gut, because driving to Ohio on a hunch that I just needed to be there, that was the last weekend I spent with my cousin, healthy and strong. And so that's my most recent memory of her and my other cousins together. So I would not exchange that for the world. And then getting the call that she was sick and that I needed to come see her. I got to her on December 20th, and she passed away December 22nd. So 3 days before Christmas. So it's like, had I thought about it and hemmed and hawed, I probably could have missed her. But I got to say goodbye to her, and sorry. But the way things worked out, they put her on hospice, and I was the last one in the hospital room with her. And I was holding her hand and playing music, and she couldn't speak. So I said, Cousin Eunice, blink your eyes if you like the music. And she blinked her eyes. I was like, wherever you're going, you know, just find a way to let me know you're okay. And she blinked her eyes. And so I knew she was still in there. It was like her mind was in there, but her body had given up. And just the fact that our last day of life, for some reason, family was taking shifts and people were in and out of the hospital. But right before they unplugged all the machines, it was just me and her in there. So I'm so glad that I just had that one-on-one time, because that's what I loved the most when I got her all to myself.
Markette, thank you very much for sharing that memory. And it's beautiful that you had the chance and the time to do that, and listening to your gut took you there. Yeah. Wow. I'm so blessed and thankful that you've shared this experience in her life with us. So I want to say, thank you so much, Markette, for your time today. And thank you for this powerful, powerful story and test. And I really, really, really appreciate you joining me today.
Of course, I'm so sorry to get emotional, but with grief, I don't think it's something that you quickly get over, especially if you love the person you lose as much as I loved my cousin. So thanks for sharing your platform with me. I hope this message inspires someone.
Undoubtedly, I think it will. And I think I think the powerful thing I just heard at church was like, faith will never lead you back to fear. And I think that there's power each time you trust your gut and you see that it was like worth it. You can continue to trust your gut more and more each time. So I would like to now say and ask for listeners, how can they keep up with you and follow you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media at Markette Sheppard. My website is markettesheppard.com. And when I launch the scholarship fund, I will definitely have a link to it on my website and as one of my Instagram links. So make sure you're following me, and then an announcement will be made on one of those social or digital platforms.
Okay. And also in terms of your podcast, how can people listen to your show?
Yeah, so More to the Story with Markette Sheppard is an entertainment podcast that gives TV and film news and reviews and interviews. It's a lot more lightweight than this conversation. So it's just giving entertainment from a Black woman's perspective to the world. And you can subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you stream your audio.
And I think there's also places where some people can see you on SVU.
Oh, that's right. So as fate would have it, my TV agent calls me this summer, and he booked me a reporter acting role on Law and Order Organized Crime. So season 5 is streaming now on Peacock. And when my episode airs, I will also post about it on my social media channels. So that was just a nice and fun, unexpected opportunity that came my way. And I'm so happy I had the experience, because Law and Order is just like one of those iconic shows. And I got to go on the set as a paid actor, pretending to do what I already do anyways, which is report. And I got to see all the players, Christopher Maloney. I Dick Wolf was on set that day, so that was pretty cool. And so you can look for me on Law and Order, a very small role, but I'm there.
You're there. And that's it. I love all the different ways that you tell stories. And before we wrap, I'd like to remind listeners that a single leap of faith can change your life, and you never know how your courage can inspire someone else. Do you have a story that you'd like to share? Then send me a 60 to 90-second note that I can read to listeners in a crowdsourced segment called The Radical Report. It's about your most recent or memorable radical act and why it was worth it. You can send me an audio note if that's easier, and if you want to remain anonymous, you can. And speaking of The Radical Report, today's radical act comes from Jen. She writes, in 2016, I ventured from California to Maryland in a loaded minivan with my wife and 4 young kids to begin a new chapter of our lives far from the comforts of home and family. I moved into my dream home on an acre of land with a swimming pool, picket fence, and a tree swing. It was everything that I had hoped for and wanted. It was supposed to feel like we had finally arrived. Unfortunately, it felt like a bubble had burst instead. I had achieved the life that society told me would make me happy. I had checked all the boxes. I'd plotted, planned, and worked hard to make the American dream my lived reality. Disillusionment set in with an accompanying sense of isolation and dread. I realized I had sacrificed parts of myself, my autonomy, my freedom, and my independence to become a loving and devoted wife and mother. I was in a cold and loveless marriage with little resources or support to make a change. I decided to chart a new path anyway. Obstacles to finding work and a place to live seemed insurmountable at the time. Slowly, I inched toward the goal of building my self-reliance and independence. I took the first job I could get that allowed me to have my children at work with me. I worked in a preschool and found purpose and meaning in working with children while also healing the relationships with my kids. Now, I work for the public school system. I will finish my degree program in a few months and may even pursue an advanced degree. It's strange to look back now and acknowledge that my decision to leave an unhealthy marriage was a radical act of self-love, and that doing so modeled to my children that they should not tolerate being treated as less than the incredible beings that they are. If I had stayed, it would have been out of fear of not being able to make it on my own, fear of what other people might think or say. While I'm far from fearless, it has been empowering to discover that I have the grit, strength, and determination to push through hard times and come out on the other side with a heart full of gratitude. Thank you for listening. And please subscribe to Radical Acts Uncut wherever you stream your audio, and follow the show on Instagram at Radical Acts Uncut. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And remember to embrace the beauty and the mess.